I think that this really serves as a really stellar example of what I wanted to do with the idea of multiple views of art within a small regional area. And with the work behind me is very confrontational, I believe. And actually, I thought this piece, no matter how many times artists say, oh, 66 by 72, when I looked at it, I just thought, oh, it's a nice little piece. That'll be a funny aside. In a corner, you'll be walking by, ooh, ah. And then when I came in, there's this giant piece. I said, where do I put this? And you really do have to be considerate of other artists. If I put this near somebody, not relative to, if it's offensive to you, I can't do anything about that. Too bad. This is Los Angeles. This is not a juried show for Topeka, Kansas. Apologies, Kansas. But what I mean is I think there's a certain, no matter what artwork I put this by, it's not, if you're offended by it, well, too bad. But there is a certain graphic, graphic arts quality to this artwork that it has to be by something else that's bold. And so I thought this was a perfect combo, and it's also a perfect conceptual combo. So this room really, I had to find a place for both of these very assertive artworks. And so what I did is by having them here, they not that they fight each other, but there's any tension that they would have caused with a, say, an elegant abstract painting is mitigated, just on a curatorial level. So I put another figurative piece over here, and then I really got lucky with this room. One reason that these are in this room is because this wall, not being white, actually just physically, it's like you enter, as a viewer, you enter a different universe when you come into this room, when you turn and see this wall. So if the walls had been white here, I don't know that these would have been here. I would have had to find another space. So the priority was really to make sure this wall, the fact that this wall was this, I knew I could put strong graphic work, and whatever I put here was going to be, it's like a different universe. So even though this is a strong graphic work to the left, that's kind of my thinking was I could get away with this. We were thinking about putting this on a pedestal, but I thought it worked better on the wall, and the figurative painting here. I just think we were able to put a lot of work that had strong figurative elements in a room where, if you look over here, we have a lot of abstraction. And so this was the painting I couldn't lift, by the way. So when it was delivered, it was in the front room, and it really didn't get much farther. So I'm saying that not as a joke. You really have to understand how much that plays into a curator's sensibility. That you really, if a work is heavy, it's like, oh God, what do we do with it? You start to prioritize. You want to always prioritize on aesthetics, but you don't 100% all the time prioritize on aesthetics. This work, if there was another artwork on the wall with it, the other artwork would absolutely disappear. This is a classic example of it's too big to share any space, and it's too strong an artwork to risk putting something else with it. Whereas on this wall, these are very elegant works that really do kind of harmonize with each other. And I know that all three of these artists have other works in the show. And so it was important for me to... oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
Conceptual art.
Performance art.
Yeah, performance.
It was really important for me to not have those works. It was really important for me to not have those works together. It was more important for me to if you're going to put more than one work in the show, if you put them next to each other, it's like a diptych. So it has to stand out on its own merits. The artist on the left here has three artworks in, and then I thought this work was perfectly graphic and sculptural, so that when you were in the first room, when you walk in here, your eye is actually going to go to this piece, not the strong graphic works over here. And it's just mysterious enough to intrigue you, and yet familiar enough, because it's photography, to actually pull you in. So I thought this was a very critical artwork relative to the whole show, as far as the first work is graphic and very centered on bringing people in who don't go to art shows all the time. And this work is now, this is kind of like the next level, like, wow, okay, this is, can you handle this? You know, you handled the artwork in the first room, which was graphic and had cartoon elements and things, but now this artwork's even a little more pulling you in. And then you really have to, you get challenged in this room on a number of levels. It's one thing to be challenged by graphic figurative work, but a lot of people, actually radical abstraction, to a lot of people this is too radical. They can't understand it, or they're going to look at this painting back here, the heavy painting, and think, see, I call it the heavy painting. But people are going to look at that and go, well, a kid could do that. So you see, I have to remember that we're still in a mall. So I'm not going to deny a lot of galleries, they want you, it's like a vacuum, and I don't believe that it exists in a vacuum. And so I never lost sight of the fact that you're in a mall here. So I wanted to make sure that each room here had something where, if you didn't know anything about art, you were still like, okay, I'm still tethered to something from my normal existence. And so, you know, and then hopefully you just go deeper, and then we gotcha. So anyway, I thought that this was a very strong work, and for most of the curating period, I had it up front. But I actually thought it was almost too strong, and that it sort of diminished other works around it. Just one thing about it is it's a giant work. Because it's photography, you actually visually you shrink it in your brain because you know photography, and it's something you experience. But this is actually a physically large work next to the wrong painting. I mean, it would, again, I'm trying to be sensitive to the other artists, not necessarily this artist. Is you could make somebody disappear. So a lot of my curatorial decisions are based on truly making sure that every artist that got in the show, and because I really do respect the fact that artists paid to be in the show, and I took it as a point of obligation to people who were paying for me to look at their art, and frankly knowing that, and this is true of a lot of people in the art world, there are many people in the art world who, if they look at your art and decide to get behind you, you will become more successful, you will become more well known, your career will advance. I'm somewhere on that list. I'm sure as heck am nowhere near the top, but I am somewhere on that list, and being cognizant of that, and having seen so many people willing to spend money for me to take a minute to look at their art and consider them, I really, really took it as a serious obligation to make sure that they were shown as, you know, in the best light. And I know a lot of juried shows are phoned in by different people. And so I didn't want to be in that group. I really wanted to operate with integrity in favor of the artists, because the longer you're in the game, the more you see the artists are the ones who always get the short end of the art world stick, and so and that's why I'm not an artist. So so that's one thing I knew that when I did the show that I could do for each artist, and I believe I succeeded in that. So we'll go to the next room. What I really try to do with this room is, and again, I'm thinking of for a person who goes to a lot of art shows, the rooms are basically, they might even look haphazard or like a cacophony. But I had a very specific methodology in putting this together, and again, it was to take the person who's never been to an art show and pull them in. And this is the room of what I consider to be the room of no return, because as ordinary as abstraction is to all of us, I'm sure I'm speaking to an art audience here. As it is the one final hurdle for the average viewer to overcome. And once a person can go into abstraction, I believe that they're going to always appreciate art. I think maybe in the big picture, conceptual art may have surpassed that. A lot of people can like look at a Rothko now and appreciate it that wouldn't have in the days that Rothko painted it, but they still have trouble with conceptual art. But I believe that a lot of people who never actually get into the visual retinal delights of great abstract painting still can kind of comprehend conceptual art as one-liner art. So with that in mind, I thought that this was the room that, like, if the average person has gotten, a non-art person has actually come into this room, we've got basically pure abstraction here. And this is done with coffee, I found out. So we've got many examples here of pure abstraction, and even this is like, you could look at this as an abstract composition of objects, but it's just, I wanted to get people in, and if they were freaked out when you turn to this wall, there's still this little graphic section here where there's like, oh wow, it's a neon piece. Oh, there's a painting with E.T. and video game slogans, and there's this one with stick figures. So it was even like, oh, okay. So I'm envisioning this person coming into this show. And again, for you and I, the art viewer, this is like, oh, okay, I get that painting, I get that painting. Oh, that painting, oh, that one took a lot of work. Oh, that's a little innovative. I see we're already kind of jaded. But I'm thinking of the average person walking through a mall and just going, wow, okay, I think I can go to the next room now. So I really want to, this is the point of no return. So my assumption was by the time they got in here, they'd be like, okay, we've seen enough. And they're going to get out. But if they're at all intrigued, and Peggy probably kept very close stats on who came in and how long they stayed and what rooms they saw and what artwork got screamed at, and or somebody running out going, oh no, oh no, oh no. You know, she can give us the whole statistical quantification breakdown. But for the most part, I thought that this was like, if you just saw these three rooms, you would have seen. Not only would you have seen a slice of LA, each room, I believe, kind of stood out as its own jury. I've done juried shows where they didn't have as many entries. And so, you know, if this was just a juried show, this would stand out with, look at the variety of approaches, and within what's presented here, look at the diverse array of ways to make a picture. And, you know, if you just think about it on a biological level, like how different everyone is within, we're all human, right? We're all the same species, but the works here are really radically different. And if you're in the art world, and oh no, that and that are so similar, but when you just, if you take it out of that, like, oh, I see art every day for a living, there's a lot of radical differences between all the work in this room, and yet it's a pretty harmonized room, I believe. There's a real rhythm to this room in particular, even with the cacophony over here. This artwork, this neon artwork, does not go with this abstract painting. It just doesn't go with it. And yet a room can be put together where they work together. Just like LA, there's people who come from such radically different experiences that how do they go together, and you know, there they are, one letting the other cut in front of him on the freeway. I mean, that's how LA works. So there's a diversity here, and yet it's structured. And again, there's like things like this pillar here. It's like, well, what do you do with this artwork? It's like, oh, you know, you have it on this pillar, it pops out a little, but it also isolates it. You know, so you have this, like, you know, what do you do with a difficult neon piece? Well, first off, you have to find somewhere in the gallery that has a plug, you know. So right there, okay, we've already limited where we can put this. So no. The thing about malls is, like, you know, if you walk into a mall and you look at the mall directory, there's actually a lot of art in the mall. It's not art on the high level that the art world is operating on. It's populist art, but there's a lot of art, you know, and so people, they have that hunger. They want to go somewhere and see something that expands their consciousness. I believe that fine art, as we experience it, is one of the greatest accelerants of the mind, and that malls tend to take they make a product to, you know, they go cloying and sentimental in the hopes of making a sale. But I could take a mall as an aesthetic experience. If you never go to a mall and then you go to a mall, they're like, wow. You know? Like, it's like, especially like the immigrant experience of somebody coming from, especially a third world country, coming here and all of a sudden being like, seeing an American mall, you know, on Christmas Eve, it'd be like, wow, you know. So as opposed to like a museum where we already have been told, even no matter where we're from on Earth, pretty much that, oh, when you're in the museum, oh, this is a special place, you know. And it's like, you know, are you supposed to talk? Is it a library? I mean, you know, it's interesting, you know. So I'm sure people come in here and they tell their kids to be, oh, hush, hush. You know, why do you want to be quiet here? I mean, shouldn't we be having, you know, great conversations? So there was a lot of photography submitted, and I am not, although ironically there's a photo exhibit at my gallery right now, I'm not much of of all the media that I have shown and curated into shows over the years. Photography is near the bottom, only in numbers, and I don't. It takes a lot for me to really get into photography, but understanding how much photography, it's like if Peggy had asked me, well, what should we open it to? I would have said, oh, painting, drawing, and leave it at that. Because people entered photography, I couldn't say, well, I don't like photography, to hell with it. So I had to take photo. So I kind of decided one of the problems with photography in an art context, and especially in a juried show, is that if your painting's next to a photo, no one's going to see your painting. That's just the way it is. People see photography. They gravitate. It's the experience they've seen. It's just the way it is. So I needed to be fair to the photographers and to the other artists, and so that's where I thought, well, I'll just do a photography show. And so Peggy had most of the photography work here, and then I got a lot of the digital work. And again, digital, when you think about it, digital is often more like an abstract painting than most photography. And yet the way that it's produced is photographic. Part of me really believes that digital art is going to be the future of abstraction, but part of me hopes not. I still love the physical painting. So that's what I really made this room. There's a few isolated photographs or you know, non-handmade artworks in the show other places, but I really tried to put the digital and photographic works here specifically for them to not overpower other artworks. And when I say overpower, I mean visually. If there's a painting next to any one of these images, it is not a testament to the greatness of any one of these images. It is a testament to the commitment of the human brain to find something that makes sense, that makes it pull over and look at a photograph in most people. And so there's almost a biological reason for putting this room together like it's put together, if that's the triumph.
It takes more.
This room is really based on putting a lot of abstract painting and putting a lot of the abstract painting in it, though, has some elements of, you know, you can see there's forms here that are obviously for nature. This one obviously has a lot of nature in it. And then I did put, there's a seascape here. That's probably the only, I think that's the only landscape / seascape that even got in the show. But I felt that it was strong, especially relative to conventional landscape. And then this is a figurative painting, but there's so much going on here. It's like a psychological abstraction. And there's a painting of swimmers over there, so it's not all abstract. I wanted it. There's a painting over here of letters, with a lot of letters collaged onto it with the silver in the back. And so I wanted it to be like a room where there was so much abstract painting to choose from, which obviously that more tells you more about me maybe than what's going on in LA or what got submitted. But I thought that this room, and we had talked about maybe having the bar here, maybe having a lot of sculpture in here, but I felt that this was like, again, if this was just a juried show, if this whole juried show was contained in this room, how could I make this, I mean, frankly, the room we're in now is bigger than my gallery in square feet, okay? Like, I could not mount this show in my gallery, just with the amount of wall space here. And so just this room, I thought, you know, how could I make this a curated show? So I tried to make this, and I look at abstraction really as, it's this catch-22 for it. It is, on one hand, if you're in the mainstream mall-going American public, abstract painting is still this very tough thing to break through. You just go, hey, if a third grader can do it, it's not art. And so, on the other hand, you have a large segment of the art world that they're over abstract painting. To them, abstract painting was this thing that happened in 1952. And so that they just look at it as like, oh, it's something from the middle of the 20th century, and if you do it, you're behind the times. You know, you're not doing conceptual art, you're not doing installation, you're doing abstract painting. Oh, I respect abstract painting from 1952. And so when you really look at it, I think abstractions almost become the new classical, like classical painting. It's like classical music in its you know, not having a grounded lyric or defined by a melody necessarily as like pop music is. But I look at abstract painting as kind of being the classical music of the art world now. But I certainly enjoy it. I always have. It's the first thing that I really responded to when I got into art in the early 1980s. And so if I have an affinity for it, and that's the worst thing you can say about me as a curator, then I'll certainly wear that with that shameful badge. But there is a lot of, as you go through the art, it's like you can't talk to your friends in the mainstream about abstract painting because they're not buying it. They think it's a con. You know, my kid could do that, it's not art. And then you turn around and you could talk to the PhDs of the art world about abstraction, and to them it's a historical anomaly. So, you know, it's kind of like this very lonely place, and I believe that abstraction really does come out of that certain sense of going beyond the verbal, and which I think its most powerful thing is I'm a word person, you know. I can talk and talk and talk, and often not say anything. But I believe words. You know, people who get so into words that words define everything, so they want to condense your art into a defined box of a prison of letters. And so I say, like, you know, you have to get out of that. And that abstraction's great thing is that it can go so beyond language, and when you connect with an abstract painting, it's as intimate an experience as you can have with your clothes on as possible. So I wanted to make this room sort of that, but I didn't want to make it the abstract room. I've got some representational stuff here, but I thought it all worked together. And this is probably my favorite room in the show, just with there's a lot here that I feel like is LA right now, is Southern California. There's a lot of, or maybe America right now. Just there's dark and bright, and the brights we almost have to isolate and highlight because the gloomy part is so right under us. So I'd like to think there's a poetry in this room too that goes beyond just you know, hanging 6 pictures up next to each other. I spent probably the longest time doing what I think, like trying to perfect this room as it grew. And this is like, if I was going to have a show at my gallery, it'd be like, okay, this is something that I think is the most, I want to say, harmonious. So, and I asked Peggy when we were journeying, I said, I really like this, but you know, this is going to be a lot to handle. And she, no, she was ready to, if I was going to pick it, she was going to put it in. So I admire her for making that commitment, because she could have easily, I mean, let's put it this way. If I was going to do a juried show, if I was going to organize a juried show that I knew I had to do a lot more of the organizational nuts and bolts, the first thing I would say is no electronic work, you know, but, I mean, I'd have a few more strictures just based on avoiding the complexity of installing a piece like this. So I'm really impressed with how this came out. And then this S.E. Zim painting of a girl, I thought this was a perfect combination. Because so much in the art world now, people won't do things by the content of the artwork as a theme. It's all the formalist stuff. So I wanted to make sure it's like, okay, you know, you've got this idea here. It's a repeated thing. So there's something going on in the collective unconscious that people are painting these images. And so, and here too, what do you put next to this? Okay, well I found, okay, you got a gorilla piece, great. I got another gorilla painting, strong, it can stand on its own. Okay, what do you put over here? Well, this is as graphic a piece as possible. It's cars. So by having this here, it really makes, it holds this in. It's like a barrier between, you know, this artwork, which is also still really graphic. So these are things that you have to think about in place. And I mean, for your own art show, just, you know, think about it that way. If your works have a diverse sort of way, if you have a very soft, meditative piece, putting it next to a lit piece like this is very, it can just kill it. It'll disappear it. But people can remember this piece, and people can remember this piece, and the strength of this piece, you know, you can't punish this guy for making a great work of art. You can't punish him, but you have to find a way to make it all work. And also, people make these bold artworks, and it's like, well, I took it as a challenge, like, he's not going to get his own wall. I'm gonna find a way. Like, there's something in the artist's ego that makes them want to make that. I'm gonna have, you know, I'm gonna get my own wall. It's like, no, you know what? No. You're not gonna get your own. I'm gonna find a way that you don't get your own wall. So S.E. Zim, who I know socially, did this great piece, and I thought it was perfect because it continues the theme, but on a completely different media, completely different approach, and a very strong artwork. The sculpture, you know, it's all kind of humorous. I'm starting to notice just looking at it now. So maybe that tells you more about me than the curator, than the artist. But I decided. I thought it would be better to just have, like, this room was so big without the walls that I thought this was the place to just put all this. Like I said, originally there was a lot of sculpture in that other room. We took it all out. Like this Jesus with a gun was in the corner. And I was like, yeah, you know what, I wanted, you know what, when you make a sculpture, it has to be 3D. If you're going to work in 3D, as a curator, I'm going to give the viewer all 3Ds, okay? So, but then there's only one. The one exception is that rabbit in there, and I'll tell you what happened with the rabbit in there was the UPS guy. We were about, I want to say 3/4 of the way or 4/5 of the way through, and the UPS guy came. Peggy's like, "Oh God, we got another artwork," and I'm like, "Oh!" And it was getting to the point where everything was like, you know, if you put the wrong artwork, it was going to be like shattering glass. And there was a couple times where I had to redo rooms, and you know, it took more hours, way more hours than I thought, because when I would move 2 paintings, I'd have to redo the whole room. And I'm like, oh my God, I said, this better be a sculpture. And we'd already we'd already started on this, and I go, I don't even know where it's going to go. And she opened the box and pulled out the rabbit, and I said, well, it's going to go right where I'm standing. So that's why we're walking that rabbit. That's literally where I was standing when the rabbit came out. I said, I thought that was the perfect touch. So that's my talk. Was that enough?
Oh,
You can talk. If you got a question.